Hello, and welcome back to another comic series AMA. This month we're going to focus on questions centered on Xenoblade Comicals. This will be the last one, focusing on mostly Mechonis Field to the end, but could also have any other question about the series show up. A quick summary for those that are new here, or maybe have not read my older works. Xenoblade Comicals is the first longer-form project I took on at the beginning of my consistent posting schedule. It's a series of comics covering my playthrough of the game on new 3DS, while also injecting a bit of an abridged series vibe to the plot and characters. The first set of questions comes from Aquasun, first of which is, once again, favorite comics from this batch? This is a tough one yet again, as there are many that I enjoy. It may be a slight cop-out answer, but anything involving the Mr. Fluffykin's backstory, the Shulk and Sharla conflict, and Alvis definitely top the placements for me in this batch. Just getting to see the little plot lines I set up from the start slowly start to take form, and covering some reveals in the actual game was really, really fun. Also, Zanza Comics always get a chuckle out of me. He was really fun to write. The next question: how long did you know how you were going to handle the end of Xenoblade Comicals? I'm assuming you mean the twist in the comic called Blood and Tears. I would say that I thought about that twist around the time that I made the first comic about intrusive thoughts back in Gaur Plains and refugee camp section. So quite early in the process of making the comics. I had already changed up the personalities of the characters so much I thought, why the heck not, and changed the twist from the main game to another twist. It was super fun to build into that twist as the series went on, and it was really, really fun to see the reactions. If you don't mean that though, and just mean the general end, I'm not sure I'd really say there was a plan for the ending, other than how I was handling the rest of the series, which was just going with the flow. Next question: how do you keep designs consistent considering how many comics and characters you've drawn across the series? What tends to happen is I try to draw a decent full-ish body picture of a character anytime they appear for the first time. Then if I need to draw them again, I just pull up one of those first appearance comics and use that as a reference. In newer series, I try to be more organized and have dedicated reference folder with screen caps of the parts of the comic that I use to reference them, so I don't have to go find different comics every single time and can just open one reference image, so it's easier. But I will admit I'm not always the best about doing that, and just default to find the comic that displays them and just use that. Next question: looking back at the end of Xenoblade Comicals, how important was this series to you? It is super important to me. Not only did it kickstart my consistent comic making and even commissioning, it and the community were there for me in one of the hardest moments of my life when my mother passed away. I was able to explore so many different jokes, artistic choices, narrative choices, and so much more over the course of the comics run. I love the base game a lot, but I do think that the Comicals cast sticks with me even more because of the hand I had in creating their specific narrative and personalities. And last question from Aquasun: if Nintendo licensed Xenoblade to have someone adapt the story into a more serious comic series, is there any advice you would give? This one's a really interesting question. I think there are two main things that come to mind. One, explore a few underdeveloped plot lines. I find that comic series that adapt games can often just kind of go beat for what the original game covered, which I do understand, but I do think it is a shame. Not only are comics a different medium entirely, I feel like it's always a good opportunity to fill some of the gaps that the main source material maybe didn't have time for, or just kind of accidentally put on the back burner. I think characters like Rhine, Sharla, Ricky, and others could really shine more if they were given chances to play bigger parts in scenes. As for the second thing that I would give as advice, don't forget about lighthearted moments. It sounds a bit counterintuitive since the question was about a more serious comic series, but a more serious tone doesn't mean no levity or humor ever. It just means that those moments are more deliberate and spread out, not absent altogether. In fact, the main game of Xenoblade has some very serious tones and stories to it, but there's also moments like Ricky being hit like a volleyball, or Ryan setting off a trap and the party falling almost like Looney Tunes. It always makes me super sad when comics try too hard to be serious and then they lose a bit of their relatability by being a bit too drab. The next question, and the last question for this AMA, comes from David Bonin. Do you plan to portray Shulk the same in Future Redeemed if you do it? I had read this first as Future Connected, but as for the answer, since I haven't reached Future Redeem content yet, I'm still kind of in the middle of Xenoblade 3, I will have to say we'll just have to wait and see. But I will say if I ever did Future Connected, which is the direct sort of DLC sequel to the first Xenoblade, I will say that I definitely keep Shulk and Melia roughly the same, since it's a really direct continuation of the first game, and it would feel very weird to go from my coverage of the first game to a completely more, the more abridged series type thing to a more accurate type thing would just feel like too weird of a jump. And, revisiting them would be fun. But that is the last question for the month, so I'll head on over to the end screen. Here you can see my lovely patrons scrolling by, along with their patron NPCs that can show up in comics if they have slots. If you're interested in asking a question or any of the other rewards that come along with supporting me, check out the link to my Patreon in the description. Even without pledging, you can have access to things like preview panels that have extra jokes, coloring pages, and occasionally some of the lower tiered rewards as a little taste of what pledging can get you. I believe that this month actually did have this AMA be available as an example. There are also other rewards that I do try to, dip my toes in from time to time. Like I did try to see some comic suggestions for summer rather than doing a poll this time, which that is going to be very fun to cover that content when the time comes. But if that doesn't interest you, then my other socials hopefully will. But in any case, thank you for watching, and thank everybody for asking questions.